Good morning. My name is Rashad Shashakli, and I'm the supervisor for this event. And just as a show of hands, how many of you are new? Okay. This is good. It's for a fun year. Rubber band catapult. It's defined in the rules as a device that will take a rubber band from point A basically to point B. It's not truly a catapult. I've only seen one in all the years I've done this. It's more like a shooter. This year, the biggest change obviously is the material of the catapult. Basically, you can make it out of anything except for wood composites, or cardboard. So now you can use your imaginations to figure out how you're going to get what you're going to make it out of. I do have, or I will be posting a clarification to the rule, something that I thought of was foam core, but foam core has paper, kind of a waxy paper on two sides of a foam center. I'm going to make a determination as to whether or not that would be an acceptable product to use, because it varies from 1/8 of an inch to, you can get it up to an inch or so. I'll find out, we'll let you know. You can look it up on the website. So with that, the goal is to take 4 rubber bands. You're going to shoot 2 of those rubber bands from one distance to the center of a target, and then you're going to move up and shoot the other 2 to the same target, and then once they're all on the target, we'll determine the scores in order that they land. And your total score is the aggregate of those 4 scores. That's essentially what it's about. The target is on the floor. It's not hanging on a wall. It sits on a floor, and the rubber band basically gets shot, usually in some sort of an arc, and lands where it may. The target is about 6.5 feet in diameter. Obviously, the goal is to get as close to the center as you can, because that's where you're going to get your highest score. And the distances that you're shooting from range anywhere from 4 meters to 8 meters in half meter increments. So 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5 meters. And that is from the forwardmost part of the catapult to the center of the target. On the main event day, you bring your machine, your catapult, a bag with your rubber bands, and a chart or some way of quantifying what settings for your catapult will give you an idea of how far that rubber band will go for any given setting. And you want to do it reasonably neatly, because in the event of a tie that we can't break either by score, we'll go to the data charts, and whoever has the most organized and neat data chart, that might end up breaking a tie. It's never gotten there yet, but you never know. With that said, I think I'm going to open it up to questions, because I find it's the easiest way. So, start with you.
Yeah, good question. Everything's going to be metric, right?
Yes.
No inches, it's all meters.
It's all meters.
Centimeters. And the second question is, does the rubber band provide its own energy to propel itself?
Basically, yes.
Because it didn't say that, so I didn't know if you could.
It does, well, that's why I say when you think of the word rubber band catapults, it's usually something that throws an object, the object being the rubber band. So the catapult in that case would be the kinetic energy, versus what you see 99.9% of the time, it's the energy from the rubber band being stretched is what propels the rubber band. So the answer to your question is it could go either way. Yes?
Do the catapults also sit on the floor, or are they on the table?
The catapults sit on the floor. Yes?
I see here it says, after you give the description of the materials other than wood or wood composites, it says metal, plastic, or wood hardware are allowed for a pivot, alignment, or trigger mechanism. So when I read that, I'm seeing that those materials are only allowed for the trigger or pivot mechanism, or Could the catapult, in theory, could be made of metal or plastic?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the whole intent.
That's what I thought.
Basically, yeah,
That's what
wood
I'm
and wood
confused.
composites and cardboard are the things you don't want to make it out of.
But you can use wood hardware for a pivot
Right.
or a trigger mechanism.
Yep.
What is the
I've
definition
seen,
of-
like a lot of people in the past have used golf tees. That's
Golf tees,
Or
I've
releases.
seen closed pegs with springs on them, I've seen
Those are allowed.
Velcro, yep.
Those are allowed.
I've seen, people are allowed to hold the rubber band with their finger, although I'm not convinced that it doesn't affect the way the rubber band releases, but hey, it's allowed. Yes?
How about the base that it sits on?
The base should be something other than cardboard, wood, or et cetera. With regard to the base, because you're basically shooting from a gym floor, which tends to be fairly slippery, we usually recommend that you put like pads underneath, and I usually suggest rubber because it'll stick a little bit and keep the rubber band, the catapult, from sliding around. Those are allowed. And if you put it in points, I think it helps better rather than a big sheet of the whatever product, as a suggestion. Yes?
Is the target on the same level as the catapult, or is that up on a table?
No, catapult and the target are both on the floor. So 8 meters from here, or let's say that mat is where the target is, you'd see an 8-foot square with about a 6.5 foot, pardon the use of feet and inches in this description, would be right there, and you're going to have a line on the, 2 lines on the floor at 2 set distances. Those distances are determined the morning of the event, so nobody knows in advance what you're shooting at from now till May. That's why we urge you to practice at 4, 4.5, 5, get all that data to know what those rubber bands will hit as a distance based on how far back you pull the rubber band, how high you point the device. Again, it depends on what kind of device you're building. If it's a catapult, a true catapult, it's going to literally throw a rubber band, which I think is more difficult, but that's just me.
Are these rubber bands supplied, or are we?
No, you go out and buy them yourself. They do have some for sale here in packages of 10, which regarding the rubber bands, there is a description in there with regard to the maximum size you can buy, 22 centimeters hanging length, a centimeter wide. You're going to shoot 4, bring more, because you might break one. I've had people bring 2 and ask, they do their first 2 shots and then they say, can I take them off and reshoot them? And we say, no, you have to have 4, because we'll, as they shoot, we mark, then they'll shoot the next 2 and we'll mark those, and then when the kids are done, we usually comment on where they landed and what they did right, wrong, all that kind of stuff. So have more, because if they break, you're kind of, you lose opportunity. So, yes.
For scoring, when you have the concentric circles, is it where the rubber band, the best of the?
It is the closest point to the. This was actually a point of contention last year. When you shoot the rubber band and it lands, it is the closest point of the rubber band to the center of the target. Because it really depends if the rubber band is right in line with the target, you would say the leading edge. But if it's off to the side, is it the leading edge or is it to the side? So we kind of err in favor of the shooters, and we say it's the closest part of the rubber band to the center of the target.
So whichever line it crosses is.
Yeah, it's in. And then if it's right on the line, that's where the 2 judges that are going to be out in the field are going to determine did it cross or didn't it. Yes?
If the rubber band is over the center, but not touching the center.
It would be considered a bullseye.
Okay.
Yes?
Can you just go over what needs to be in this table?
Okay. Most all the rubber band catapults that I've seen have essentially there's 3 parameters. One is distance, which is going to be set the day you show up. We'll tell you you're shooting at, say, 4.5 and 7 meters. So from that, you would say, okay, I know I practiced at 4.5 and 7 meters, and these settings will get me to that distance. As to the settings themselves, the first is generally tension on the rubber band, how far back you stretch it. Because I don't know if you've seen a lot of the rubber band samples. They have a couple. I think they have a couple online. If you look, there's a couple of videos that show. But essentially, 99% of them are an arm that has a pivot, so it can go up and down this way. And then they usually provide for pivot or points along that arm that you stretch the rubber band to. Obviously, the more you stretch it, the more tension is in the rubber band, the more energy it has to propel itself. So if you're shooting this way, it's going to drop, obviously, and it might get here. But if you lift it up and you give more tension to it, it might arc, go farther, and have, because it has more opportunity to not hit the ground before it gets out far enough. So you're going to do basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions, whatever you choose, and then different angles that you can set your catapult at. And I would do it, most people seem to do one rubber band type. You can do different types of rubber bands. You can do small ones, long ones. But I would do a different chart for those different rubber bands because they perform differently. The more you...
So there's not like a standard size rubber band you use?
No, there's just in rules there's only a maximum, which is 20.
Because like these are the ones that they have at the table.
Right.
But this is not necessarily the size rubber band. You could use a small rubber band.
That's correct.
Got it.
And there's no limitation on the number of positions that you have, both along the arm, if you will, if that's the way you're going to build it. Obviously, the more positions you have, the more data you have to collect. So the kids get very busy collecting data. You'll also find that the data that you collect, you'll say, well, these ones aren't getting me to the half-meter points, so I can ignore those data points or those positions. You need to find the ones that will hit you on the half-meter increments is your best shot at getting it. It's not a guarantee because rubber bands are funny. They're not precision devices, and their behavior changes the more you shoot them. They behave a little bit differently, so it's kind of, there's a little bit of luck in there too. So, yes?
Your comment on the kids are supposed to participate in building the catapult.
Yes.
And so when it was cardboard and wood, that was, but now with, you know, the materials of like metal, or can you kind of comment on how, what you expect?
The idea is that they participate in the building of the catapult. Part of the reason that we change the material every year is that, so that you're not using your great-great-great-great-grandma's catapult for 100 years. We want you to participate in understanding what it means to build the thing and how the building of it contributes to how good a score you can get, and it's just fun. Obviously, with the use of power tools, and you know, I've seen some where they were MIG welded in Dad's shop, and they looked real pretty. They didn't necessarily give the best result, though. Oddly enough, sometimes the simplest machine yields the best result. That being said, I will, as a tip, the more, not the more sturdy, the tighter that you can make your machine, so that if the pieces are wobbling, there's more likelihood that it's the rubber band's going to drift off target. So if you make a little bit tighter machine, the bolts sort of snug so that the thing's not wiggling and jumping up and down, you'll get a better result. Yes?
Is there a limitation on the size of it?
No. Not this year. It could be the size of a bus.
Well,
We're getting up
after that,
150.
they don't set it up, right? The kids are going to carry it out.
During the upcoming events during March, well, let me say this. Every team, there's two students only on the May performance, okay? During the ones in March, you can have more than 2 participants because you may have K5, K6, you have alternates, somebody gets sick, the other guy still needs to know, or the other gal still needs to know what's involved in the event. So you can practice with 3 and I would say 4, as many as you want, knowing that you're only going to have 2 on the shooting day. When you come to the big event, You're going to check in your catapult, your bag of rubber bands, and your data chart. They're going to have your team name, team number on it, so that we can find them after the shoot. And when we check them in, we look them over and say, okay, this one complies or it doesn't comply. Once they're in impound, it's all about the kids. You don't coach from the sidelines. You can watch as a parent and a coach. But once the kids are out there setting up, they're all on their own. It's like the real world, right?
So they'll be able to get their catapult, bring it to the starting point.
Yeah, we'll
light
tell
up the
them.
rubber bands.
We'll tell them in what order. Usually it's first come, first served, and everybody manages to come as soon as the gates open. There's a flood of people waiting to do rubber band catapult. You have all day, or up until 1:30 or whatever time it ends. Spread yourself out. Don't worry about being the first in line, because then there's going to be a queue down the hall and people get a little frustrated. So we recommend don't be the first to rush here, because it's all open, and we're going to have 4 shooting positions on game day.
Two shooting positions. No, 4.
4. I'm sorry. We're going to have 4 team positions, each shooting the same 2 distances. So we basically place the target in the center of the gym, and all 4 corners within 8 meters. You've got the teams, the tape is there. Speaking of tape has thickness to it, so the back of the piece of tape is usually marked by me as to this is the side every part of the catapult has to be when you're shooting. That's the 0 line, if you will. And they can, when they set up, they can be on the wrong side of it. Doesn't matter. Once they start shooting, they all have to be behind the line. What other? When you're loading the machine, if it accidentally goes off and lands across the line, that counts as a shot. So when we ask them to load, we usually tell them, load from the firing pin first and hook it onto the leading edge that way, so that it actually snaps or lets go. It's firing backwards and not crossing the line. That way that shot does not count. If it goes the other way and crosses the line, that counts as a shot, so they've just reduced their score by potentially 25%. Yes?
Could they load the catapult and then pull it up to the line?
You could, but you're going to have basically, once they come in and they get there, we tell them, get your catapult and your equipment. Okay, you're going to go to this firing position, set up at the first firing position, which is usually the one farthest back, and then we'll let them shoot both positions, and then we'll go to the next team. You can have it ready, but really most of the kids will sit there and they'll hear the number that they're shooting from, immediately go to their charts, decide how they're going to set the catapult up, and then load it. It's probably easier that way, but there's nothing in the rules that says you can't preload the first one and bring it up. There might be more of a likelihood it might fire if you do that, though, if they accidentally dropped it or bumped into it or in the back.
Do the kids have a time limit on shooting the 4 rubber bands?
Technically, no, but you've got almost 80 teams participating, and in the roughly 3-4 hours that the event takes place, so that kind of limits you to about 15 minutes a team. Some teams take longer to set up, they get really fussy. Other teams are like, boom, they've done 4 shots in about 2 minutes. So it's hard to gauge, but you want to be able to, I guess, teach your kids, the team players, to do it efficiently, because while it's not a real time constraint, you're probably limited to about 15 minutes.
Follow-up question, you said there were 2 team members. Do each of them have to take a shot, or can just one person?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who takes the shot, but I find usually one is, they seem to divide the tasks that they need to do up amongst themselves, whether one's reading the charts and telling them what the other guy had set up, and then somebody else, I don't know, flip with a coin, whatever, to who gets to shoot. That's up to the team players. Yes?
just a point to make sure, the whole catapult, even the firing arm, needs to be behind the line.
In
Nothing
any, in
can
any
be
firing
in front.
position. So if you imagine something that's doing this, the higher you go, the farther back this thing is moving.
Right.
That means theoretically, if it's doing this, you could have that guy up to here, but as soon as you drop it down to here, you got to pull it back.
Okay.
So it's the point at which the rubber band leaves the thing. Now, in the past, I've seen some catapults where the base is actually long, it sticks out in front of the shall we say, the barrel, and that base has to be behind the line. So a lot of the kids will put the base right up to the line. There's nothing to say that you can't be a foot behind the line or a yard behind the line. As long as you're doing your shooting and your data collection the same way all the time, you should still get similar results.
So the shooting positions will definitely be half meter increments?
Yes.
There won't be any differences?
Nope.
Only every
That's why when you're doing your test data, you'll say, oh, every time we set it for this, it's 4 1/4. And it never, okay, forget about that one. Find another setting that gets it that extra 1/4 of a meter to a half meter increment.
Is there a minimum and maximum distance that we'll be shooting from?
4 meters is the minimum, 8 meters is the maximum. So if you do, it's basically 4 times 2, 8, there's 8 possible positions. And as I said, they won't know until game day what those are, and it depends on how I feel after I have my first cup of coffee. Yes.
When's the practice session?
Which one?
Is there more than one?
Yes, it depends on your school.
Okay.
Where's my March. Sorry, this is kind of low tech here. Okay, if you're in South Macomb, Roseville, it's Saturday, March the 7th. If you're at Lance Cruz, it's the 14th, which is also Saturday. If you are Utica, it is Tuesday, the 24th, in the evening.
March 24th?
Pardon me?
March 24th?
Yes, and if you are Chippewa Valley, it's the 28th. Yes?
Are you running the district levels?
I go to each of these district ones. I usually manage to make it out to all four of them. So I'll be there helping, just kind of answering questions and what have you, yeah.
So if something wasn't compliant, you would be able to let us know at district for county?
Oh, you mean whether it's going to happen or not?
No, like say your catapult was not compliant with,
Oh,
I know one year there was paper,
oh,
there
yeah,
was a question.
yeah. And that's a good point. On a couple of occasions, we've had people build a catapult because either they didn't read the rules and they just kind of assumed it was, from last year's rules or whatever. And when they came in, okay, we had, say, wood, and they built it out of metal, and I said, this doesn't comply. So you've got basically a month or two to rebuild it in the correct materials. So my first suggestion is whatever you do, all of you coaches and supervisors now have a copy of the rules. Read and make sure they're the 2015 rules, which is no wood with composites or cardboard. Look online regularly, usually up until about a week or two before the big day. We'll be posting clarifications, questions that came up, and responses to those questions. So keep looking online for those, and don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, so don't be shy, especially the people that are new. It's amazing. We learn from your questions stuff that we didn't think of. So we have to make some sort of a determination. Yes?
And the students use some external devices, like let's say a laser pointer, to figure out a straight line or something of that sort?
I don't really have a problem with it. Some people have expressed concerns over safety, if somebody accidentally gets popped in the eye with one of those. Personally, I figure if you practiced with your catapult, you kind of know how accurate it is. And generally, most of the kids, they'll look right down the barrel and they'll say go, and they know what's going on. It's not forbidden, but I found that I don't know that it's necessary. So, yes.
The kids are setting up the catapults, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So where will we be when they're doing that? Are we?
You can be on the sidelines watching. We'll have kind of they'll probably have bleachers there.
We're not allowed to say anything to them?
No, once they've checked the catapult and their equipment in, it's all up to the kids. When they come in and they say, okay, we're team Utica number such and such from this school, okay, you've got your catapult set up over there. At that point, they're on their own. It's like going into the SATs. Mom and dad aren't there, coaches aren't there.
All right.
You can watch, you can cry, silently cheer, you can be vocal a little bit.
I was going to leave.
You know?
All right, thank you. And where's the practice? Where's the practice at? I know the date, but where is it going to be?
It's usually at the, there's a list of the schools. I'd have to get the exact list.
It's fine. It'll be on.
It'll be posted on.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. And incidentally, for those of you that don't know, www.macombso.org is the website. And if you click on the upper tab that says elementary, and then you can look through the rubber band catapult thing, the rules will be there, clarifications will be there. There was a question in the back.
Can they alter the rubber band at all, like cut it and tie it or add something to it? So
we want you to take just the basic rubber band, whether it's this big or up to the, I think it's 20 or 22 centimeters long and 1 centimeter wide is the biggest. We don't use bungee cords, fabric covered stuff. No, it's just buy some rubber bands, find the ones that you're comfortable with that seem to work the best. The really small ones, if it's like this long, is probably going to be difficult to use, only because if you stretch it too much, there's a likelihood it might snap before it ever gets hooked. So you probably want something with a little bit of length to it. But, you know, practice, practice, practice.
Are the lines perpendicular to the target? Are you guys going to set those lines up, or could they be off a little bit?
No, what I typically do is I'll take a tape measure. Once we set the target in the middle of the floor, we have somebody hold the tape measure at the center. I go out 7 meters, let's say, 45 degrees, because the target is square, and the target plate is square. The target is round, obviously. So I go off to the corners, and that's where I set my shooting positions. So I usually do it there, and then I orient the line from which they're shooting perpendicular to that line. Yes? Yeah.
Okay. Follow up to the laser pointers. Like if the kids find that they shoot best 4 inches behind the target, can we bring a ruler?
Oh yeah, you can. I've seen people bring rulers. They've attached strings.
Okay. I just want to make sure they can bring other tools. And do those get checked in?
Yeah, if you have something that you need to set your catapult up on a line, I consider that part of the catapult. So if you need a plier to take out a nut, if you need a ruler or a piece of string, you can attach that piece of string to the thing of say, predetermined length. It's a funny thing about these. I don't like to tell people how to build their units because we like to see as much creativity as possible. But when it's an interesting phenomenon, kids will, when they see that line, the catapult's got to go right up to the line. When they practice, they use that line and everything else. But there's always a risk that if they're not paying attention, they might accidentally slide the catapult across the line before they pull the trigger.
And then that shot's disqualified, right?
So that shot would be disqualified. But if you pull it back, the second shot, then it's okay.
Will they,
but there's
will
nothing.
they know?
Oh yeah, well we usually have at least 2 judges scoring. Okay. We usually have at least 1 person going around when they set up to remind them, make sure everything's behind the line, make sure of these things before you shoot, and then we let them go. But a lot of kids will come in and they deliberately set their catapult up so that it's always a foot or 2 behind the line, and they have a string or a tape, and they set it up. As long as you're practicing your shots always that same way, the data will always give you the result that it gives you, right? So you'll know, okay, if I'm shooting 2 feet behind the line consistently, and I'm hitting 4, 4.5, 5, 6 meters, whatever it is, you're good. That's why you want to record that information on a data chart. So, yes?
What if the catapult jumps after it's shot?
After it's shot?
So, I mean,
no.
You know, like, I mean, like,
Well,
what if it moves forward?
Well,
If it hits the line?
typically that would be, you know, once the kid's shot, they might bump it accidentally. That's, the shot is the shot, it's done.
Okay.
You're fine. You're fine.
Because that'll be my kid.
Okay. Let's go right now. I wouldn't worry about it. As long as when they're shooting, it's behind the line, you're good to go. Any other questions?
So I have. Oh.
Yeah.
County is May 9th, right? County is
County?
May 9th.
Is it the 9th?
Yeah.
You got another?
I have a curious question. So if you have 4 teams shooting all at the same time?
No. We shoot, you'll have 4 teams setting up. The first team that's set up will be told, okay, go ahead and shoot. So they'll shoot their first 2 shots from the farther distance. They'll be told to reset, shoot your next 2 shots. Once they're done, we kind of tell them, hey, you could have thought about this, thought about that, bing, bing, bing. Off you go, next team comes in. In the meantime, we tell team number 2, be ready and go. There's a little bit of an art to that. There's been some discussion, should we let everybody shoot their first 2 shots, then go back? I find that much more difficult to score.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to.
I like to be focused on one team at a time because we have 2 judges all the time, and we agree when we mark our cards, yes, that was the score for the first shot, second shot, the third shot. And they get written down, then we retabulate at the end of the whole event before they go in to be tabulated in the computer. So I figure having a lot of those rechecks avoids problems and concerns after the fact, and that's brings me probably to one of the last things. We keep the catapults, the data charts, and all their stuff re-impounded right after they shoot until the end of the event. That way, once we tabulate all the total scores, if we have a question of, well, wait a minute, did that one, is there a problem either with the scoring, the machine, or whatever, we can go back and say, oh wait, this was one of the machines that either complied or didn't comply. And speaking of which, we'll let you know when you check in whether it complies or not. So pretty much if you comply at your local event, you shouldn't have a problem in the May event. But we keep them generally for the whole event. A lot of people ask, can I take my catapult now? And I said, no, we'll keep it in impound until we're done with all of the scoring.